I've carried this secret for years and it still twists my stomach every time I think about it. I thought I was helping, but maybe I only made everything worse. Was I protecting someone or destroying myself in the process? Welcome to Reddit Toxic Family Telltales channel. New episode every day. So let me tell you about the English teacher who made me hate school. Mrs. Harrison. She didn't just run her class, she ruled it like a monastery, where the only voice allowed was hers. And the rest of us? Silent monks trapped under her watch. She had this bizarre theory, something she'd read in some dusty education journal from the 1990s, that teenagers couldn't actually learn while talking. Our brains apparently weren't developed enough to multitask. So no talking. Ever. Even during group projects. We had to pass notes back and forth like we were inmates sneaking contraband. Oh, and she had gear. She downloaded an app that literally measured the classroom's decibel levels. If the needle so much as nudged above a whisper, she'd slam her hand on the desk, reset the entire assignment, and glare at us like we were criminals. On day one, she made us all sign contracts, I'm not kidding, actual contracts that said if we dared speak, we'd get detention and a phone call home. One poor kid sneezed too loud, and she slapped him with detention for seeking attention. Like what? Imagine needing doctor's approval to clear your sinuses. Her class was torture for everyone, but especially for kids who actually learned by talking things through. 50 minutes of silence every single day. No questions allowed unless you wrote them on index cards and waited for her to collect them at the end of class. Partner work? Just sitting there, sliding papers across desks and colored pens to prove you both contributed. It was like prison homework with extra steps. And kids started failing. Not because they didn't know the material, but because nobody could figure out what she wanted, and she never explained. Complaints piled up. The guidance counselor even tried to observe her class, but Mrs. Harrison spun it as some kind of innovative teaching style to prepare us for standardized testing. I'll admit, I found ways around her system. If you practiced enough, you could whisper just low enough not to trip the app. My friend Jade and I tested it at lunch until we perfected the art of ghost volume talking. Risky, yeah, but necessary. Still, it always felt like she was watching us. She had this creepy old camera in the corner, supposedly for security. We all suspected she checked the tapes just to catch rule breakers. Anyway, one day we were doing peer reviews on The Great Gatsby. 40 minutes of passing essays back and forth while she hummed to herself at her desk. I was paired with Aiden, this quiet kid who never caused problems. About 10 minutes in, I noticed something was wrong. His hands were trembling. His breathing was short and fast. He kept clutching his chest, eyes wide like he couldn't get air. I recognized it instantly. My sister has panic attacks. Aiden was spiraling, trying so hard not to make a sound because noise meant detention. He grabbed at his throat like he was choking, tears streaming down his face, and still, Mrs. Harrison didn't notice. She just kept grading papers, completely oblivious. Other kids saw it too, but no one moved. No one dared. And I knew if I didn't help him, he was going to collapse right there. So I broke the sacred contract. I leaned over and whispered just under the app's radar, "You're having a panic attack. It'll pass. Breathe with me." I guided him. 4 in, 6 out. Over and over. Then grounding, 5 things you see, 4 you can touch, 3 you can hear. My voice steady, calm, while inside I was panicking myself. 10 minutes. 10 minutes of breaking the one rule that ruled our lives. And finally his hands stopped shaking. His breathing slowed. Color came back to his face. He mouthed thank you. And for a moment I thought we got away with it. But the next day? Oh no. Mrs. Harrison was waiting. She had her laptop hooked up to the smartboard, grinning like she'd just won the lottery. The screen? A paused video of yesterday's class from an angle none of us even knew existed. She hit play and suddenly the whole room was filled with my whispering voice coming out of the speakers. Counting breaths. Coaching grounding. "Can anyone tell me," she said, smug as ever, "what rule is being broken here?" Silence. The only sound was the clock ticking. My face was burning. Aiden looked like he was about to throw up. She let us squirm, then shook her head and wrote my name in huge letters on her detention pad, holding it up like a trophy. Detention. 3:15, and I'll be calling your parents. She even updated my grade right there in front of everyone. And then, as if nothing happened, launched straight into metaphors in chapter 7. The rest of the class was agony. Everyone too scared to even flip a page too loudly. When the bell finally rang, Jade gave me this small, supportive nod, while Aiden whispered thank you, so softly I almost didn't hear it. I stayed behind to reason with Mrs. Harrison, to explain what really happened. But she didn't even look up. She just pointed at the contract pinned on the board. No exceptions means no exceptions. And she smiled. That cold, satisfied smile. So yeah. At 3:15 I sat in detention with 3 other kids in a musty old room that smelled like carpet from the 1970s. The monitor didn't even look at us, just read some fishing magazine. I sat there stewing, wondering if I should report her. But Mrs. Harrison always found a way to dodge consequences. When I got home, my mom was waiting, phone in hand. She'd gotten the automated call. I told her everything about Aiden, about the hidden audio. She looked proud of me for helping, but also worried. Because she knew exactly how dangerous it was to go up against a teacher like Mrs. Harrison. The next day, I dragged myself back to English. Mrs. Harrison had already lowered the decibel threshold even further, bragging it would improve productivity. The whole class sat frozen, terrified to breathe too hard. She kept glancing at me every few minutes, like she was savoring her victory. Afterward, I pulled Jade aside. I asked if she'd write a statement about what she saw during Aiden's panic attack. She agreed, but begged me not to mention that we'd practiced whispering at lunch. She couldn't risk it hurting her college applications. I told her I understood. But honestly, it made me feel more alone than ever. 2 days later, I finally sat down in Amara Pierce's tiny office. Papers were spread everywhere across her desk, legal pad open like she was about to cross-examine me in court. I dropped into the squeaky chair across from her and started from the very beginning. I told her about Aiden's shaking hands. About how he couldn't breathe, how his eyes filled with tears while Mrs. Harrison measured silence with her stupid decibel app, as if that mattered more than a kid literally gasping for air. Like, imagine caring more about keeping your class quieter than making sure your students don't collapse in front of you. Someone needed to remind her, teaching is not supposed to be a game of library prison warden. Amara didn't interrupt me once. Just wrote everything down, her pen scratching across the page. But when I mentioned the camera with audio nobody ever knew about, she froze. Looked up at me with raised eyebrows. I told her flat out, the contracts never said anything about recording sound. She underlined that twice, hard enough to tear the paper. Then she asked me to write a full statement. That night, I sat at my kitchen table for hours typing every detail. Aiden's chest clutched tight, his hyperventilating breaths. The grounding techniques I whispered. And that creepy hidden audio. My hands shook when I finally hit send. The next morning, I was pulled out of first period and sent to the assistant principal, Mr. Proctor. His office smelled like stale coffee and old books. My statement was sitting on his desk, covered in yellow highlights. He told me my detention stood for now. But they were reviewing the school's recording policies. His tone was neutral, but his pen tapping against the desk gave him away. He promised they'd look into it further. During free period, I hit the library computers and pulled up the student handbook. Searched every page for camera policies. Security cameras? Yes. Audio recording? Nothing. I screenshotted everything and saved it. By lunchtime the next day, the whole school knew. That's the kid who got detention for helping Aiden. People whispered support in the hallways, told me I did the right thing. But when I asked if they'd put it in writing, they all looked at the floor and made excuses. Nobody wanted to be on Mrs. Harrison's blacklist. The air in that school felt heavy, like everyone was scared but no one dared move. And then came the seating chart. She announced it was for classroom management, but everyone knew it was a punishment. She moved me to the front corner by the door, isolated where she could watch me like a hawk. Message received, step out of line again and I'll bury you. 2 days later, Preston, the kid everyone called Whale from the student newspaper, found me eating alone by the vending machines. He slid into the seat like we were in some kind of spy movie and whispered, I want to write about surveillance and privacy. He warned me the advisor probably wouldn't approve anything that called out a teacher by name. I gave him the facts anyway, told him about the audio recording. No names yet. He tucked his phone away, eyes wide. After school, Aiden found me at the bike racks. He looked around nervously before speaking. I've had panic attacks before, he admitted. But never in class. He said he was terrified of being labeled weak, of teachers thinking he was a problem. He thanked me again for stepping in, but told me he wouldn't file a complaint. Too much attention, too risky. I told him I understood, but it stung watching him pedal away so fast, like even being seen near me could get him in trouble. That night, Amara emailed me back. She'd flagged the audio issue to the district's tech staff and contacted the nurse about accommodations for kids with anxiety. That meant students could be allowed brief verbal check-ins during medical episodes. Progress, yeah, but painfully slow. 3 days later, in English, someone dropped a textbook. It hit the floor with a thud, and Mrs. Harrison's app shrieked like an alarm. Without hesitation, she made us restart the entire essay assignment. 30 minutes of work, gone in an instant. The frustration in that room was boiling over, kids glaring, papers crumpling, but no one dared make a sound. 2 days after that, Mr. Proctor showed up at the classroom door just before the bell. Routine observation, he said with a smile. Oh, and suddenly? Mrs. Harrison transformed into the world's best teacher. She let kids ask questions. Walked around the room helping people. Even laughed when someone dropped a book. Every kind gesture was dripping with backhanded digs about people who don't understand innovative teaching methods. The second he left, she went right back to dictatorship mode. That night, I checked the grade portal. My participation grade had dropped from AB to AC. Her comment, disruptive behavior patterns. My stomach dropped. My mom saw it instantly on her phone and called the school furious. The secretary said grade disputes required a formal review process, weeks of paperwork, 3 forms, a committee. Designed to make parents quit before they even started. The next day, I saw Aiden leaving the nurse's office looking calmer, carrying a small yellow accommodation card he kept touching like it was a lucky charm. Jade told me the counselor had set it up so he wouldn't have to suffer in silence again. At least someone was being protected. Meanwhile, Whale tracked me down again, frustrated. His article idea had been shot down. Too controversial, the advisor said. He wanted to pivot, make it a broader piece about student privacy rights. Basically, strip out anything that pointed directly at Mrs. Harrison. The school was protecting itself. Classic. And then, things got even weirder. Mrs. Harrison started carrying her phone around and whispering into it while she walked past desks. Recording voice notes. Documenting us like we were suspects in some criminal case. Everyone pretended not to notice, but we all felt it. She was building her own arsenal in case things went south. It only got worse. One afternoon, Jade tried to borrow a pencil, whispering barely above a breath. The app still beeped. Mrs. Harrison slapped her with detention instantly. That night, Jade texted me, I can't risk this. I need to keep my GPA safe. She pulled back from me in class after that. And honestly, it hurt. My mom had finally had enough. After the grade drop and Jade's detention, she demanded a meeting with the administration. They scheduled it for the following week. Everyone would be there: Proctor, Amara, Mrs. Harrison. The showdown was coming, and the thought of sitting across from her made me sick. That weekend I prepared like I was going into battle. I built a timeline of every single incident. Printed screenshots of grade changes and comments. Practiced explaining everything calmly when inside I was fuming. My main goals: stop the audio recordings, force real emergency exceptions, and get my grade fixed. 3 days before the meeting, I tested her in the only way I could. During silent work, I wrote on an index card, "Are whispers allowed during medical emergencies now? What if someone dies waiting for written permission?" She read it. Set it aside. Said nothing. Bell rang and she walked out like my question didn't exist. Later, I saw Aiden in the hallway handing Amara a statement. His hands were shaking. He told her he couldn't face the meeting, but he wanted his panic attack on record. His voice would be there even if he wasn't. And then came the announcement. During homeroom, the principal read a district memo over the loudspeaker. All classroom audio recording required written parental consent and immediate disclosure at the start of the year. Teachers were ordered to stop recording immediately and delete existing files. When I walked into English, Mrs. Harrison was at her desk, reading that memo. Her face was red, jaw clenched, teeth grinding. She folded the paper, shoved it in her drawer, and started class like nothing had changed. But we all knew something had. 2 days later, she unveiled her next big innovation. Pop writing quizzes. Not on the material. Not on grammar. No, every 10 minutes, she'd stop the lesson cold and hand us these special blue cards. We had to write down exactly what we were just thinking about. Seat numbers printed right on them, so she knew which thought belonged to who. Yeah. She wasn't just controlling our voices anymore, she was trying to crawl inside our heads. Like, since I can't eavesdrop on your whispers, I'll just read your brain instead. It was creepy. It felt less like English class and more like some sci-fi experiment in student surveillance. That same day, my history teacher quietly pulled me aside in the hall. She told me what I did for Aiden took courage. That Mrs. Harrison's methods were way too extreme. But then she glanced around and admitted she couldn't say that publicly because of teacher solidarity. My science teacher said the same thing after class, muttering about unions and professional courtesy. Their whispered support didn't mean much if they weren't willing to actually stand up when it mattered. That afternoon, Nurse Kim found me at my locker with a yellow folder. She'd created a brand new medical protocol for panic attacks in classrooms. Tap-out cards kids could hold up, automatic nurse passes, even 1 minute of breathing time in the hallway. And best of all? It was official. Approved. Teachers no longer had any discretion, they had to honor it. Finally, at least future kids like Aiden wouldn't be left choking in silence. The night before the meeting, my phone buzzed. It was Jade. She told me her parents were furious about her slipping grades and she couldn't risk any more trouble. She wrote a short statement about seeing Aiden's panic attack, but kept it bare bones. No mention of how we'd practiced whispering at lunch. I texted back that I understood, but my chest felt heavy reading it. The next morning, my mom drove me to the school early. Aide Proctor's office. Leather chairs, heavy silence. He shuffled papers and checked his watch. Amara walked in next, folder thick with notes. Then Whale Preston from the district office. And finally, Mrs. Harrison. She swept in carrying her grade book and a folder stuffed with printed emails, not making eye contact with anyone. The air felt like static before a storm. Aide cleared his throat. He explained the district had reviewed everything and confirmed it. Recording students without consent was a direct policy violation. Mrs. Harrison immediately cut in, insisting she was just documenting her professional development. Aide shook his head. Intent doesn't matter. Consent does. She had to stop all recording immediately and delete what she already had. Her fingers clutched that folder so tight the edges bent. Then came Aiden's panic attack. Mrs. Harrison coolly claimed she hadn't noticed because she was focused on grading, and that students should advocate for themselves if they needed help. My mom's voice cut sharp. How is that possible when you've banned them from speaking at all? Amara leaned in, reminding her that teachers had a legal duty to respond to emergencies. Mrs. Harrison's jaw clenched. She stared down at her grade book like it could save her. Aide exhaled, scanning his notes. He said my detention would stay, because yes, technically I broke the rule. But the 20% participation penalty? Reduced to 5%. My mom bristled, ready to fight, but Aide raised a hand. This is the best compromise under the circumstances. Mrs. Harrison's pen was shaking like it might snap in half. Then the new rules were laid out. Every classroom had to stock tap-out cards. Teachers were required to allow brief verbal check-ins for medical concerns. And the infamous decibel app? Raised to normal conversation level, not whisper level. With every rule, Mrs. Harrison's face turned redder. She scribbled notes, lips pressed thin, like she was swallowing her rage one bite at a time. Nobody walked out of that meeting smiling, but something had shifted. The next day in English, I noticed 3 yellow index cards labeled tap-out sitting on her desk. Her phone screen was blank, no decibel app running. The room still felt cold, but when someone coughed, nobody flinched. After class, she called me up. Didn't look at me. Just slid a paper across her desk. An extra credit assignment, 5 pages on classroom management techniques. Due in 2 weeks. A trap? Probably. But I needed the points. So I took it. That weekend, I spent 6 hours at the library. Dug through articles about collaborative learning, anxiety accommodations, even threw in a couple of dusty studies from the 1990s, figured that'd speak her language. Every sentence I wrote I second-guessed. Too pointed? Too aggressive? I tiptoed through that essay like it was a minefield. Monday I turned it in. She said nothing. But at lunch I saw her reading it. 2 days later, during a timed writing exercise, I caught Aiden's hand trembling again. His breathing started to race. This time he reached for one of those yellow cards. Held it up with shaking fingers. Mrs. Harrison's lips tightened, but she nodded. He left, came back 2 minutes later calmer, sat down and kept working. She just kept grading like nothing had happened. Progress. Tiny, grudging progress. That afternoon, Jade found me at my locker. We hadn't talked in weeks. She said she missed eating lunch together. We agreed new boundaries. No whisper practice, no risks. Just friendship where we could have it. The next day, we sat in the cafeteria like normal kids, talking about homework and TV shows, steering clear of the nightmare that was English class. Friday, Wales article hit the school paper. District technology policies and student privacy rights. No names, no direct callouts. But anyone who knew what had happened could read between the lines. Even some teachers murmured in the halls about clearer guidelines. And slowly, things shifted. Mrs. Harrison started giving us 60 seconds at the end of class to whisper questions. 1 minute. She'd stand there with her arms folded, looking like a prison guard timing visiting hours. Kids treated it like a speed round game show. Go. Ask your question, make it count. Still, it was something. A month later, my grade sat at a B-. Not the A I usually earned, but I'd survived. Aiden used his card once a week. Nobody laughed, nobody judged. The silence in that room wasn't complete anymore. It wasn't freedom, but it wasn't total prison either. Then came the grocery store. I was picking out cereal with my mom when someone tapped my shoulder. Aiden's mom. She hugged me tight, tears in her eyes. She told me how Aiden finally told her everything. How I'd helped him through something terrifying. She squeezed my hand, said they were switching him to another English class next semester. Sometimes walking away isn't weakness. It's survival. The following Monday, Mrs. Harrison strutted into class announcing she'd been invited to present at a district workshop. Maintaining academic rigor in challenging times. She said it with this smug little smile, like she'd turned everything into a victory. Of course she was spinning it. Of course she was. But at least that awful audio recording was gone for good. She couldn't show off footage of a kid gasping for air and still call it innovative teaching. On the last week before winter break, we had our big Shakespeare exam. Halfway through, I noticed Gabe, the kid next to me, bouncing his leg, clutching his chest, panic rising. Our eyes met. I exaggerated my breathing, 4 in, 6 out. He copied me, steadied himself. And Mrs. Harrison? She saw the whole thing. Couldn't say a word. Couldn't punish breathing. She just stood there watching as Gabe calmed down and kept writing. By report cards, I had clawed my way up to a B+. Not perfect, but after all that, it felt like victory. That night, my mom told me she was proud. Not for the grade. But because I'd done the right thing when it mattered. And then, on the very last day before break, Mrs. Harrison pulled the weirdest stunt yet. She put on classical music during silent writing. Called it a seasonal gift. The no-talking rule stayed, obviously. But violins filled the room, and for the first time in months, it didn't feel like a prison. Some kids even smiled while writing about winter traditions. Progress with someone like Mrs. Harrison? Tiny. Painful. Hard one. But progress. Wow. Mozart during silent writing. Truly revolutionary. Who needs human voices when you've got violins? Thanks for watching. Today's train wreck is over, but tomorrow's ride is already on track. Subscribe so you don't miss it.